Hello, everybody. My name is Clinton Bonner. I'm Vice President at Topcoder, and we're going to try a little blog series, but we're going to do it in audio format. When I was writing this blog, it just felt more conversational. So if you're on our blog on our site, you could pick up all the bullet points below. We'll have an MP3 player embedded, but this just felt more, as I wrote it, it felt more conversational in nature. So I figured, why not record it? I think it's actually a more pleasant way to kind of have this discussion. So this is going to be a bit of a series focused on the future of work. And this first part of the series, we're going to title "The Real Future of Work is On Demand and Rooted in Trust." So we hear this term a lot lately, the future of work. And as thoughtful individuals, we might truly think on like, what does that term mean? Like what are they trying to say when they put something out there like the future of work? On the surface, I feel it's pretty simple. We as humans, we have an understanding or at least some philosophy of what work is today. Perhaps, for you, it conjures up powerful imagery of glass offices. Maybe it's windshield stared commutes that's on your brain, or perhaps the social connections that become, a meaningful part of our lives over coffee and over lunches at, traditional places of work, at an office. There's likely both positives and negatives in your mind right now that represent the ways you feel about the present of work. And with that understanding of what work is today, there are lots of changes already happening leading us into what we seem comfortable calling the future of work. That recognition alone that work, a societal pillar, has a different future than its current manifestation is, to me, like unto itself, it's really significant. It's something to let sink in and absorb and just think about critically for, at least a few moments. And like, any good buzzword or term out there, marketers are going to take that and they're going to create ways in which you can immerse yourself into it, learn more about it, and help prophesize it into being. It's kind of what happens to us as humans. We get an idea, we market it the right way, more people get behind it, it kind of becomes a movement, and before you know it, everybody is talking about this thing called the future of work. And how does this happen? Well, I think after all, 50 million Elvis fans, can't be wrong. So the fact of the matter is that many people are discussing, organizations and media outlets such as Bloomberg Radio or Wall Street Journal or CNBC and many others in the business world talking about this future of work. But what do you do if you're in the midst of this important change and in some ways you're helping to lead it? In a little bit of context here, Topcoder has been since 2001 leading in many ways to grow a community, a passionate community of technologists, designers, developers, data scientists, QA engineers who can get in and out of on-demand work, and we've been doing that for quite a long time. So if you're in our shoes and you're helping to lead this and you're helping to prophesize it into being, and you want this future of work to become a reality, but what do you do if you're in the midst of an important change like this and you feel strongly that the majority of the content, the majority of the themes defining something as important as our future of work are simply not being as precise as you'd like them to be? Well, I don't know about you, but we wanted to speak up. Topcoder as a team, we wanted to have bring our voice to the forefront here and say, hey, we think there's something fundamentally misaligned with how the future of work is being shaped right now, and we have a point of view, we think a strong and correct one, on kind of what's missing, and that's what this series is going to talk about. So let's first look at the current future of work talk tracks and kind of give you our point of view as to what we're seeing out there, and maybe this meshes with what you're seeing, or maybe you have a different opinion, but let's put that out there first. So in our point of view, the current future of work talk tracks and the educational events that use future of work as the topic, as like an epicenter, the gravitational pull, they happen to be like extraordinarily similar to one another, and they happen or tend to focus nearly exclusively on a few things like employee upskilling or employee retention tactics, preparing the workforce, the future workforce, for AI and automation. How do you get the enterprise ready for that? And there's lots of talk about social responsibility of the enterprise. We of course saw that dominating out at Davos this year at the World Economic Forum, with the idea of stakeholders over or with shareholders, and like the purpose of the enterprise. So, these are all important topics. They're worthy of study, they're worthy of debate, and they absolutely do play a role in the future of work. However, this to us at Topcoder is tantamount to, watching the Rocky Balboa series, which of course, I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you probably know Rocky Balboa. But it's like watching that series, but instead of it being focused on Rocky, it's focused on Rocky's brother-in-law, Paulie, and his adventures, kind of meandering through the shadow of his famous brother-in-law, who is, of course, the champion Rock. And as fans, we adore Paulie. We love his redemptive arc. We love his battles. We love his grittiness. Heck, we love his robot girlfriend from the fourth installment in Rocky Four. Like Happy Birthday, Paulie. It's wonderful. He brings grit. He brings comedic treasures, and throughout the series of the whole Rocky series, Paulie has an interesting arc. It's a very supportive arc, and it's really good. However, Rocky is about a fighter who overcomes long odds and keeps getting back up. Like, that's the story of Rocky Balboa through 6 installments, if you want to count Rocky 5, which wasn't all that good, let's be fair. But that's okay. It wasn't about Paulie's adventures. So to us, if we're looking at the future of work and we're talking about employee retention and employee upskilling, that's like an incremental step change that we see. And to us, again, it's like, well, you're telling Paulie's story. It's a side story. It's an additive story, but you're leaving out the star. You're leaving out the real star of the story. You're leaving out Rocky Balboa, and we want to bring that and put that in the limelight. So what is that? So let's dive into our point of view as, in this scenario, what's missing currently in the discussion around the future of work. So in my opinion, and our opinion at Topcoder, the real star, and therefore the real future of work, is actually the booming use of on-demand talent for the enterprise. You might know this as crowdsourcing, or the gig economy, or the talent economy, or by some other name. The nomenclature doesn't really matter. At Topcoder, we prefer using the passion economy, and there's several reasons why. There's actually a really great Andreessen Horowitz blog. I think it's a16z.com that was written by Li Jin. She does an expert job of really laying out and defining what's the main differences between the gig economy and then what she is dubbing the passion economy. She's had 2 parts come out so far. I would definitely go check that out, and we'll link that below. If you're back on topcoder.com on the blog, you'll see the links there. And something nice to think about from my perspective in telling this story is the idea of like, well, how do we get to now? Like, and have we kind of seen this pattern before? And the answer is, we've seen this pattern over and over and over again. Is that if you think back to like the 2010s, so not that long ago, right? We're talking after Steve Jobs holds up the iPhone, and I think that was 2008. The late 2000s, and then throughout the 2010s, when applications became what they are, and the revolution that brought to us. But we're talking about this era of BYOD, or bring your own device, that really changed the enterprise. Employees wanted experiences that they were already receiving from B2C applications. It's likely cliched, but it's really appropriate to say that the stakes were raised and the employees were like not going back. So there was this BYOD craze, and then enterprise applications that came along with it. And really this led the intense focus, and that's still happening in many ways, called digital transformation, right? Like transforming your organization on an enterprise level to be digitally led. And that of course happened, or was spearheaded with the pressing on of the mobile phone into the enterprise. And we're still seeing that. Like so many companies are still on their what would be coined their digital transformation journey. And there's plenty of studies out there with saying who is succeeding and who is not. But fundamentally, at the core of that, it was led from B2C. It was led from consumers in their let's call it their outside of work life, getting used to applications and getting used to having certain services and things at their fingertips through their mobile phone, that they then brought it into the enterprise and basically demanded it. They wanted that same ease of use. They wanted things to be simpler that could now be simpler through mobile. So I think it's a nice historic and very recent thing that enterprises have gone through that we could probably all think about and really have an understanding of right away, because it is kind of so recent. So, in our opinion, this is kind of happening again. What we're now seeing, and we have seen for several years now, is that consumers are rapidly adopting B2C applications and platforms that are making use of the gig economy. This is our car rides, our burrito deliveries, our menial tasks or social chores are now being handled and really well by other people. And it's happening, rather magically. You remember that first time you got an Uber or got in a Lyft, and these things became frictionless and became simpler, and sometimes became cheaper, certainly more convenient, and it created this movement and opportunity where freelancers participating in the gig economy kind of became very normal and became in many ways preferred. So the path from introduction, which included, a lot of social uncertainty and fears, all the way over to a clear, established preference to use gig-powered platforms to better our personal lives, is truly, remarkable. On the grand scale, gig platforms, they've earned and established trust, and then they paired that with valuable experiences and, interfaces that wowed and dazzled, that make the old way of doing something feel laborious and feel kind of ineffective, and in some ways kind of dumb and outdated. And going back to that, what we saw just in the 2010s, again, that's why the analogy works for me, is that it's very similar. It's the BYOD happened for the enterprise in the 2010s, and now this adoption of the gig economy once again was consumer driven. The B2C applications drove this forward, and they've raised the stakes once again. The expectation and how you could use on-demand people, on-demand talent to get things done, it's now everywhere. It's very pervasive. It's what we do, and just like BYOD, there's no turning back. So I want to anchor a bit around that word trust. It's really the key theme to this first part of the series. As trust was gained in leveraging gig workers for, lower skilled labor, things that most people could do. You could drive for Uber or Lyft if you have a car and a clean license. The next level, communities of specialized skill, those were forming, and they were growing at like an incredible clip. Now, this is not perfectly linear or in some perfect, chronological order where one stood on the shoulders of giants and then did it next for specialized skill. As an example, Topcoder was actually started in 2001. So before the word crowdsourcing was even coined, which I think was in 2006 by Jeff Howe in the Wired article back then. Before that was even a thing, crowd and using and tapping into specialized skills was already happening. However, the most important development that's been quite recent to bolster the use of on-demand talent is that has happened recently, in the sense that trust has been established. Again, on the B2C side, it's been established. And now what we're seeing at Topcoder is, with that trust established, the opportunity for B2B use of on-demand talent, again, whether you call that gig or call it whatever you want to call it, it's the use of on-demand outside talent. With that trust now established, there is a boom happening. We look at that and say, going back to the Rocky Balboa analogy, like that's the true star of this story. It's not employee upskilling. It's not employee retention tactics, which are really more HR things. This is more about future proofing in a step change. This is not an incremental change to make something a little bit better. This is a step change to rethink how sourcing could happen in the future. So maybe you could think about this for yourself, the first time that you did get into an Uber or a Lyft in a rideshare. And, if you could hop into a stranger's car and trust that you would arrive safely at your destination, well then, if that trust is there and you could do something on an individual level like that, well then maybe you could trust outside talent to help you write your blog content or create, whimsical branded videos, or design your next mobile application, or ethically hack your website, or do product testing on new sports apparel that hasn't even hit the market yet, or develop new worker applications like we were just talking about in the BYOD era. And wouldn't that be a good thing if that same trust could be there, where now I don't think, if you're hearing this, you probably don't think twice about any reservations around hailing a car via rideshare. It's probably become the way you do it. And if you could get there, if trust could be established at that level, well then could you push it? Could you push yourself? Could you push your team to ever higher value creation things and your use of on-demand talent to maybe help with some really tough things, such as computer vision algorithms to power, geospatial AI, or using on-demand QA engineers whipped right into your product dev cycle so that you could just deploy faster. So if you could keep kind of climbing this pyramid, or climbing this ladder to higher and higher value, if we could get there, well, wouldn't that level of trust in platforms and trust in the outside on-demand talent, wouldn't that fundamentally change how work can be approached and then executed on a really big scale for enterprises? And our opinion is, like, of course it would. That's my opinion. Of course it would. If you could have that trust, it would probably fundamentally change how you approach work. And the thing is, those kind of milestones I just rattled off above, those projects I was talking about, those things are actually, they already happened. They're already in our past. They're kind of milestones that have been achieved along this line of just building out this trust on how can you use outside talent, on-demand talent. Really exciting stuff, really important things that are making enterprises a heck of a lot more productive, and therefore they can get to market faster, they can be more innovative, and at the end of the day, that's huge. That's the name of the game. Enterprise leaders who have already experience working with on-demand talent to ramp productivity and to push innovation forward, they are not turning back. Just like BYOD in the 2010s, employees like, we're not going back. Now you have enterprise leaders who are experiencing this and using it as part of how they get work done. They are not turning back because they're going faster. They have burstable bandwidth and they can produce more. These types of leaders, guess what happens to them? They get more budget. They actually could hire more FTEs. This is not about replacing FTEs. This is about taking your team and augmenting them with outside and on-demand talent so you can go faster. The leaders who are doing this are accelerating their futures. They're making huge gains within their enterprise and standing out like rock stars because, frankly, in many times, they're lapping. If there's like an internal competition with other product teams or just other teams, they're running laps around them in a pure productivity standpoint. They're just getting more done. So in the same way you likely felt that magic of that rideshare app, and how those experiences eroded your fears and they built trust, these early adopters of on-demand talent for the enterprise, they're more emboldened than ever, and they're using on-demand talent for higher and higher value things. And this is a fundamental shift. It changes how we view or really experience limitations. It enables a higher volume of smart risks to be taken. It emboldens leaders further who are, likely already quite bold, and perhaps most importantly, it allows for more ambitious targets to be aimed at. A couple of stats to back this up, and we'll certainly link this out if you're on the blog to see where some of these stats are coming from. But in the US at this point, it's estimated that about 40% of millennials have a side hustle. They're participating in the gig economy in some way. More than 2/3, so 67% of those who are in the gig economy are actively seeking out gigs. They're looking for gigs. They want that style of work. And 98% of workers want an option for remote work as part of their life. So you kind of look at these things together and say, okay, people desire more freedom. They want more remote work. People want to opt, so the talent wants to opt into gig work. They want to they want to be able to opt into projects that matter to them. And by using their high value skill, their specialized skill through trusted platforms, they're able to go do that in a brand new way. That's the talent side. And we just kind of spent the first whole part of this setting up the demand side coming from the enterprise. So our point of view at Topcoder is this isn't just about reskilling or retaining your full-time employees. It's fundamentally focused on something different, And for us, we believe more meaningful than incremental shifts to how you approach traditional labor. The current future of work conversation is not precise enough. It's not aiming at the right target. And if we have a shot at something, we have to know what our target is. So we want to help everything move and aim this more accurately and with more ambition. So we did something about it. We're launching something called Upriser. Upriser is a new industry event that lives at the epicenter of on-demand talent and enterprise leaders and the doers who are wielding this talent in really significant ways. The content will be very focused. The thought leadership will be world-class, and the networking and the educational opportunities at Upriser, we're promising they're going to be one of a kind. At Topcoder, we've been doing this again since 2001. So we didn't set out specifically to kind of change how the world works, but now we're 19 years into this, and we see the pervasiveness, if you will, of on-demand talent as it's just at that precipice, that edge of really exploding and booming for the enterprise. So we thought it was a really smart time to have content that is a future of work focused event, but it has a different aim and a very, very different purpose than the future of work events that have come before it. So if you're piqued by this, this real future of work, if you will, and you think you, your team, or your organization can benefit meaningfully by focusing on it, understanding it, and knowing what to do with it, then, I would say that Upriser will provide great value to you and your team. So if this piques you, the best place to go right now is upriser.com, but we spell it differently. So UPRISOR, so there's an O instead of an E, Upriser with an O.com. There's a lot of interesting things that Upriser is going to bring to the table. We'll talk about those in part 2 of this series as we kind of continue this longer form discussion around the future of work. So I'm Clinton Bonner, VP at Topcoder. You can find me on Twitter at Clinton Bon, or you can email me, cbonner, CBONNER, @topcoder.com. If you want to chime in with your opinion on this topic, whether you agree, whether you have a different point of view, I'd love to hear it. I think it'd be a great conversation. Thanks so much. We'll have part 2 out sometime in the coming weeks.